everyone, my name is Shauna in case you don't know, and welcome back to another video. In today's video I'm going to be doing the no disclaimers book tag. If I can find the original tag creator, I'll link them down in the description below, but when I initially copied all these questions to use for this tag, I was struggling to find the tag creator because it looked like the original video for the tag was no longer available. So there's basically just 8 quick questions for this tag and I thought it'd be a fun one to do. Question number 1, which trope or tropes annoy you the most? I feel like at this point in time there's only really like one trope that like really bugs me, and it just depends on the way that it's written. Love triangles bug me. I think it's because I've realized that sometimes love triangles are just like straight up cheating. I think it's also like the way that my brain is wired is like I'm very much a person who like very much just likes one person at a time. I don't like being like back and forth between multiple people, and so I think like just because of the way that my brain is wired and because sometimes love triangles can border on cheating, I just like don't really vibe with love triangles anymore. Not that they're bad, a lot of my favorite series still have love triangles in it, I'm just not the biggest love triangle fan. Question number 2, which writer or writers do you feel are overrated / overhyped? So the big one for me is John Green, and I have a lot of authors I could choose for this, but I'm choosing an author that like I've legitimately tried multiple of his books because I want to enjoy his books. So I read Paper Towns and I thought it was just meh. Like I didn't really understand the hype, I didn't find it that appealing. I read Looking for Alaska and I didn't like it. I read Will Grayson as well and I did not like that one. So I didn't read like his most popular ones, his most popular being like The Fault in Our Stars, for example. However, I think his writing style just isn't for me, and he doesn't write characters that really interest me at all. I mean, when I watched The Fault in Our Stars movie, I liked those characters, so maybe I'll like The Fault in Our Stars, but I've tried 3 of his books so far and they just don't work for me. I think that the pacing in them is decent, but otherwise there just isn't anything super appealing about it to me. The characters aren't appealing, most of the plots aren't that appealing either. I feel like John Green is someone who like I like his YouTube videos a lot, so I really want to get into his books, but his books just aren't working for me. Question number 3, what are your least favorite books you've read since joining BookTube? Question is are we talking like books that I just happened to read or books that I read because of BookTube? Because of course I've read a lot of books that I don't like because I joined BookTube back in like 2018 or 2019, but at the same time I feel like a lot of those are just like ones I would have read anyways and didn't like, so I'm gonna choose ones that I read because of BookTube / BookTok, because I also spend time on BookTok, and so like ones that I was influenced by basically. I really didn't vibe with A Court of Thorns and Roses, unpopular opinion. I really did not vibe with that. I read that one because it was all over BookTube and BookTok. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling with Faye, and then the rest of the series sort of evolves from there. I do like the sequel. I read the sequel. The first book though just is not my cup of tea. I have a whole video on A Court of Thorns and Roses that I will link down in the description below. So that was one that I read because of BookTube and BookTok and I like didn't vibe with it. Another one is when I initially joined BookTube, V.E. Schwab was like super popular. I could suppose it could also just be when I started watching BookTube, because I definitely watched BookTube before I like started making videos for it. I read A Darker Shade of Magic and it just like didn't work for me, and it was so hyped and everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, and I still see people talk about it. I still see people being like, oh, I want to cosplay from it, it's my favorite series, and I'm like, I was so bored throughout that. I don't even fully remember the details of it. I just remember being so bored and being annoyed by the characters, and I think the unique thing about it was that there was 3 different versions of London that the characters could travel between, so like that part was unique, but the rest of it was just like so incredibly boring to me. Another one that I read recently that's been super hyped up on BookTube and BookTok and everything is Blood of Hercules. What was that book? Like seriously, that was, I'm sorry, that was god awful. Some of the worst writing I've ever read in my life, the most cringiest lines I've ever read in my life, but it's advertised as a dark romance, and I'm like, you can't have both. You can't have lines that are so bad that I'm laughing out loud when you're trying to do a dark romance. I was like, I don't vibe with that. So those are just a few, but I mean there's other ones that I've read that I really don't like. Those are ones that like I feel like I was influenced by BookTube and BookTok to read. Question number 4, a terrible ending that ruined an otherwise quality book. Ooh, this is a tough one for me because I feel like a lot of times with books I don't vibe with the endings, but I'm trying to think if there's any that like completely ruin my thoughts on a book. Oh my god, I need to look up what this book's name is. Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling. I found Camp Zero to be a very interesting book for a lot of the book. I thought it was a very unique take. I thought it was dealing with a lot of interesting themes. This book deals a lot with climate change, and it is about this girl named Rose who goes to Alaska, and her agreement to go to Alaska is to spy on an architect in exchange for housing up in Alaska. And while they're there, they start hearing about a group of women soldiers who are supposedly living and working nearby in a Cold War era research station. So there's like multiple plot lines going on here. There's like past, there's present, and there is also the plot line with the woman in the station. So there's a lot of different different points of views and stuff. So it was like really interesting, especially because I like climate change stuff, and it was also dealing with sex work, and it was dealing with it in a way that I thought was really interesting that I hadn't read about before. So there was like a lot of like positives to it, and I was like, this is really intriguing, like this mystery is unfolding, this world is really interesting. And then the plot twist hit at the end, and I remember just putting down my Kindle and being like, how did you ruin this book? And I mean, it wouldn't have been a 5-star book for me, it wasn't like a perfect book, but I was so like captivated by it. And I remember just at the end when the plot twist started hitting and the characters started just making decisions, I was like, I'm checked out. I was like, I just feel like everything's been ruined for me. And it was really unfortunate because it was a really, really good book up until the last few chapters, and I just like, the book was completely ruined for me, like completely. And I don't know, I still get angry about it from time to time because I'm like, how do you ruin such a good book with all of these plot twists at the end? You could have just not done that. Question number 5, which fictional characters do you wish were not killed off? A lot of characters. I don't fully know how to talk about this without spoiling things, so what if I just say like book names and give hints, because I don't want to like just list off the characters and start spoiling names. So the first one I'm going to say is the big character who dies in Crown of Midnight. I think that she should have stuck around longer. I also don't like how she sort of died to further the main character's plotline. I don't really vibe with that. The big character that everyone knows that I love who died in the Maze Runner series and the Death Cure, I don't like that he died, but also like I understand why he died, but that death has always destroyed me. In Order of the Phoenix, that big death for me is like not the saddest for me out of all the deaths, but it is the one that like I wish didn't happen, because Harry was so close to like having like family. You know what I mean? Like, he is part of the Weasley family to an extent, but like it was his chance to have like just connections to his parents and family, and he was like so close to having everything go right, and it was just stripped from him so suddenly. So that one is one that like if I were to undo any of the deaths in the Harry Potter series, it would be that one. But it's not the saddest one for me. Like, the saddest one for me is the sibling who passes in Deathly Hallows. If you know, you know, that one is the saddest for me. But however, like if I were to undo a single death in the Harry Potter series, it would be the one who dies in Order of the Phoenix. Question number 6, what are some of your bookish pet peeves? I'm gonna go bookish pet peeves both with like stuff that are in books that I read, like different writing things, and in like bookish like behaviors that I see a lot with readers and stuff. My biggest pet peeves in terms of writing and stuff is, first of all, accidentally changing tenses. I don't like that, like changing from past to present and stuff like that by mistake. If it's intentional, like it fits, but if it's by mistake, it's a pet peeve. It turns me off from a book. When a character says that they let out a breath they didn't know they were holding, that always irks me just because it's a very overused line. Also, when things are gendered that shouldn't be gendered, like Sarah J Maas is notorious for doing this. I actually read one book by her recently though that didn't have that. I read The Catwoman Soul Stealer. That was like a phenomenal book and she didn't have any of those lines, but Sarah J Maas and some other authors in particular have a tendency to like male and female things when it doesn't need to happen. Like, for example, a line could be like, Selena saw the male aggression on Kale's face or something, and it's like, why? Why are you making that a male thing? You know what I mean? Or like it happens with female things too, just like adding gender in where it doesn't need to be in there, you know what I mean? And in terms of like the bookish community and like other readers and stuff, my pet peeves are like promoting books and not talking about the problems with the books. Like, that just really irks me, because like the thing is, you can enjoy whatever book you want, but I also feel like if you are like an influencer and have a platform, you have a responsibility to like call out things that have problems. And so I'm like, if you're talking about like Sarah J Maas, for example, frequently, but not calling out the problems within her books and her as a person, it's like you are part of the problem. So that always irks me. But at the same time, another thing that irks me is people who hate on what other people read. I don't think that there's truly any book that you should be like, no, I hate everyone who reads this book, because people read books for different reasons. And I also think that if someone is like reading a problematic book, for example, as long as they call that out or they buy the book like secondhand, I don't think it's harming anyone. So yeah, sort of twofold, like you have a responsibility to call things out, but at the same time you shouldn't judge other people for what they read, especially if you don't know the person personally and understand like why they're reading the book, and if they are like truly supporting the author, you know what I mean? Like, don't judge a person by the books that they read if you see anything that you think is bad or problematic in those books. I don't know if that makes any sense. I sort of went on a little rant there that went a little bit away from pet peeves, but anyways, that's my thoughts. Question number 7, what are some books that you feel should have more recognition? I honestly think that all of Kristen Simmons' books should have more recognition. Kristen Simmons is a young adult author who writes a lot of dystopian books, and a lot of them came out during the time when dystopian was super popular, but her books never really like picked up steam and recognition, and I feel like they should have, especially because I feel like a lot of the themes, especially in the Article 5 series, have a lot of really relevant stuff given today's political climate in the United States. She also has a really unique book series called The Deceivers. It's about a school for scam artists. I think that one's really unique and deserves more attention and love. I'm trying to think right now about other ones that deserve more recognition. I think Alekia Dow's books, like The Sound of Stars, deserves more recognition. Her books are wonderful, they are very unique, they add a lot to the sci-fi genre, and they add a lot of like demisexual, asexual representation because they deal a lot with characters on the asexual spectrum. I also think that like Darling by Kay Ankrum is a really good one that deserves some recognition. Also ace representation there, that's a dark Peter Pan retelling that is young adult. I think there's just a lot of like really smaller independent books that I really like too. Like Katia Rose's books deserve a lot more recognition. Those are mostly new adult queer romances. There's a few other genres that she dabbles in as well, but those are the main ones that she does. Those authors are some of my favorites where I feel like they have really good books that deserve more recognition, but unfortunately often get swept under the rug and don't get as much attention as they deserve. The final question is, what are your thoughts on censorship and banning books? I feel like I may get hate for my opinion on this, but my opinion on this is that we shouldn't be banning or censoring books except for books that sort of glorify and encourage like harmful behavior. But also I feel like we can't just straight up ban them. Settings wise, we need to have it banned, if that makes any sense. So for example, there are a couple books that glorify suicide and have increased rates of hospitalization in mental hospitals for teens. Those type of books are ones that I feel like shouldn't be in high school classrooms. However, I don't think that they should be like completely banned. Like if an adult is like, hey, I want to read this and understand sort of like how a teen's brain might work when they're like idolizing suicide, or if they're like, hey, I like want to see why this book is so frequently banned and stuff, I feel like we shouldn't ban books like that. However, I don't think that these books should be like banned point blank. I think it's very situational. Like if someone's an adult and they're like, hey, I want to understand why this book was banned, or hey, I want to understand the mindset of someone who is really struggling with suicidal ideation, sort of like romanticize it in their brain, I think that they can be useful books in those contexts. But I think just sometimes like point blank having these books available that glorify problematic things in like adolescent settings where kids are very vulnerable and very, how do I word this? You're very susceptible to influence when you're a teen. I think we do need to be careful about books with those kids, but I'm only talking about like books that legitimately like glorify suicide or like rape and stuff like that. So like a lot of books that get banned, for example, are like To Kill a Mockingbird or like Harry Potter and stuff, and I'm like, don't ban those books because they aren't glorifying and promoting dangerous and problematic behavior. I don't know if that made any sense at all, and I know that a lot of people disagree with me on that because I know a lot of people are just straight up don't ban any books at all, and I'm like, I think it is situational, and I think we do have to recognize that teenagers are in a state where they can be easily influenced by things and they often struggle with mental health issues, and so you have to be careful about certain books that are a bit more on the extremes with the way that they depict certain triggering topics. I might get canceled for that, but that's my opinion on it. So that is all for today's video. I hope all of you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to me if you haven't already. All of the tag questions will be linked down in the description below if you'd like to do this tag. Technically it says who do you tag. I'm not tagging anyone in this video. I don't really tag people in my tags, but if you want to do this tag, feel free to consider yourself tagged, and all of the questions are down in the description again, so just feel free to click on down in the description so that you can find them and do this tag yourself. I upload one longer video every week, and on the days that I'm not uploading longer videos, I upload my cosplays or my YouTube shorts, so feel free to stick around for my next YouTube video, and I will have YouTube shorts that are going up in the meantime if you want to see any of my cosplays. Hope all of you are having a great week, and I'll see you in my next video. Until next time, everyone, goodbye.